If parenting feels harder for you than it seems for other families, well, while we never truly know what's going on behind closed doors, the reality is you may be having a harder time. This does not mean that your neurodivergent children aren't wonderful. I know mine are. But let's call a spade a spade. It likely is harder. Raising neurodivergent kids is messy, beautiful, and a lot. I'm Mary Ellen Yates, and this is Growing Together, Neurodiversity at Home. Let's figure it out together. Okay, let's get started. So, why does it feel harder? You can be doing everything right, and you can love your child just as much as a parent raising a neurotypical child and still feel exhausted. Neurodivergent parenting often involves a lot of problem solving. At one point, I even asked to be released from a leadership church calling that I really loved because the mental load of trying to help my two oldest children was all-consuming. Research even shows that there are higher emotional and financial strains for families with neurodivergent children. So, why is this? Well, for one reason, our nervous systems are different. And a lot of parenting advice assumes that kids have calm nervous systems and strong executive function skills. Things like being able to notice their bodies, shifting attention, and learning how to change their behavior for next time. But the fact is, many neurodivergent kids don't have these skills yet. Not because they don't want to, but because these parts of the brain are still developing or developing differently, and they likely need more explicit instruction. For instance, I've had some people suggest that if my oldest son doesn't sit down and eat, that I should just let the time run out and him not eat and let him miss that meal. Because the natural consequence will teach him that next time he should eat when it's time. Well, that advice assumes that he has the executive functioning skills to notice hunger, manage distractions, and connect that missed meal to future decisions. But the reality is, once his ADHD meds have kicked in, he isn't hungry anymore. So, if we followed that advice, he would miss breakfast and lunch. That doesn't teach a lesson. It creates a very dysregulated kid with low blood sugar who feels awful all day and struggles to function. And so at that point, I have to ask, at what point does a natural consequence become unsafe? And is that advice actually what is best for my child? And this shows up in a lot of different ways, not just with food. Many neurodivergent kids have sensory processing differences. There's often a lag in emotional regulation, and executive functioning takes a lot more effort. This can look like kids who are noise and light sensitive. They melt down over what seems like a small thing, or kids that want to do something but genuinely can't start or stop on their own. These kids are often treated as if they are intentionally being defiant, but this isn't about defiance or trying to make your life harder. It's about capacity. Expecting behaviors to change without the underlying skills is like asking someone to run on a broken leg. So let's try something different and not force these traditional systems that you've probably already noticed aren't working for your kiddo. And once you look at behavior through that lens, capacity instead of defiance, a lot of traditional parenting tools start to make a lot less sense. Not because parents are doing anything wrong, but because those tools are designed for kids that already have skills that many neurodivergent kids are still developing. One really common example are sticker charts or behavior tracking systems. These systems rely on delayed gratification and emotional regulation, being able to hold a goal in your mind, tolerate frustration, and believe that tomorrow can be better than today. So my oldest lasted in preschool for about 3 months, and they had a happy and sad face behavior system. The goal was 3 happy faces in a day. My 4-year-old son was never able to have 3 happy faces in a day. And what I watched was a kid that woke up every day saying it's a new day and excited for the day. And every day he became more and more hopeless and not necessarily excited for a new day. And while that experience seems like only a short amount of time, that short experience lowered his self-esteem. And still to this day, he talks about how he was kicked out of preschool. And he's 11 years old now. He could see that it was easier for the other kids. And that made him feel like a problem. And as he got older, but before his diagnoses, he often asked, "What is wrong with my brain?" That system relied on skills that he did not have yet. Another place that this shows up in is punishment-placed discipline. Once I started learning more about neurodivergent development, I had to ask myself a different question. Would I expect this behavior from a much younger child? If a child is developmentally a few years behind, emotional regulation or impulse control, them for those missing skills does not teach them those skills. Immediate feedback matters more than delayed consequences. Skill building matters more than shaming. Again, punishing kids for missing skills does not teach these skills. So when kids can't regulate or organize themselves yet, that means that parents end up carrying a lot more than just the basics. That load is emotional, logistical, and often long-term, and it can be exhausting. Over the years, I've had to build systems to help myself stay organized and stay calm. For me, that's things like keeping my keys in the same spot so I don't lose them. That system worked for years until kids entered. If my kids move my things or break my routine, what was a calm system turns into chaos. And suddenly, I'm dysregulated too. And the thing is, our kids haven't lived long enough to build these systems. And so while they're learning, parents are picking up this extra executive function load. This looks like constantly keeping track of school materials, pencils, workbooks, supplies. It looks like managing appointments, therapies, and advocating for services. It looks like planning years ahead, not just days. Thinking about what supports our kids will need later on. And often there are financial strains too. Fewer work options, more medical and educational expenses, which adds another layer of pressure. So it's not just keeping our kids alive or providing them with basic needs, it's carrying everything around them. So let's talk about what this channel is about. So instead of pushing harder and expecting ourselves and our kids to somehow power through all of this, this is the approach we take. We focus on support over pressure. This means asking what the child needs in order to succeed. And this is going to look different for every child. And instead of assuming they should be able to meet an expectation without any help. For us, over the years, that has looked like simplifying routines so that there are fewer friction points in the day and a lot of body doubling when needed. We focus on regulation over compliance because a regulated child can learn, connect, and grow. But a compliant but dysregulated child is just surviving. That's why we build our days around nervous system needs, not just checking boxes to get things done, like providing outside time, headphones, quiet time. And we rely on systems instead of pure willpower. We don't expect the kids or the parents to remember everything or to hold it all together in our heads. It's just not possible. So for us, that looks like visuals, external reminders, like alarms, and flexible schedules to support executive function. And we don't try to fix our kids. We try to provide environments that support them. If this feels familiar, then you're probably in the right place. I share both personal stories and practical tools for neurodivergent families, especially for times when things are feeling overwhelming or you're unsure what to try next. You don't need to have it all figured out. I know I still don't. You just need support that fits your family. And I'm Mary Ellen Yates, and this is Growing Together, Neurodiversity at Home.